I go to Narv Shabbos this week's Parshas, Parshas Vayichi. Parshas Vayichi, of course, is most famous for the Birchas Yaakov, the blessings that Yaakov gave over to his children on his deathbed. There's a very famous Gemara that says that when Yaakov Avinu was to be buried, when the Shvatim brought their father to be buried in Marsa Machpelah, they encountered Esav standing there, and Esav was not allowing Yaakov to be buried. And Esav said, "I'm the true Bechar, so I deserve to be buried here." And the Shvatim countered and they said, "You sold the Bechira to our father." And to which Esav responded, I may have sold the Bechira, but I never sold the burial rights. So Yaakov Avinu can't be buried here. And the Shvatim argued and back and forth until Esav said, if you can prove it, if you can bring the contract that proves it, then I'll allow Yaakov to be buried here and I'll leave you alone. So right away, the Gemara says Naphtali was a very fast runner. Naphtali went and back to Mitzrayim to get the proper documents that they needed in order to bury Yaakov there. In the meantime, while Naphtali was gone, Yaakov's grandson, Hushim ben Dan, came to see what was going on. Why isn't his grandfather being buried? And of course, we know that Hushim was deaf, so he couldn't hear the exchange between Esav and the brother, so he didn't understand what was happening. When it was communicated to him what was happening, that Esav was holding everyone back from burying Yaakov, he immediately got up and he killed Esav on the spot because he couldn't stand the fact that Yaakov was not being allowed to be buried. That's the sequence of events. It's a very famous Gemara. But there's a beautiful, I saw Rav from Goldberg brings down the Einei Yitzchak, and the Einei Yitzchak has a beautiful explanation to this, and I think there's a very important lesson. I wanted to say it over. So the Einei Yitzchak says, why specifically in this order did the story have to happen? So we know that Hushim ben Dan, Yaakov's grandson who killed Esav, was deaf, as I mentioned. He couldn't hear anything. We also know that there are some people who have a certain way of talking, have a certain manipulative manner about them. They're just manipulative people, and their speech is so manipulative. There's an expression that a good salesman can sell snow to an Eskimo, ice to an Eskimo. There are people who can convince people of anything because of their power of persuasion, their manipulation that they have of people. And Esav was one of these people. We know that the Torah says that Esav was Tzayid Befiv, which we generally translate to mean that he was a good hunter and that was tasteful to his mouth, but it could also be understood to mean that he hunted with his mouth. He used his mouth to hunt, to manipulate people into doing things that they didn't want to do or they couldn't even think that they wanted to do beforehand. That was Esav's koyach. He had that certain koyach of being a tzayid befiv, being sneaky with his mouth, manipulative person. And a lot of times in life, you'll encounter people who are manipulative people, and you talk to them, and after you talk to them, you're left wondering if anything that you held beforehand was even true anymore, because of their power of persuasion with their mouth. And you start questioning yourself. You wonder if maybe what they're saying is true. Maybe what they're trying to impart on us is actually the truth. Sometimes you need to be a Hushim ben Dan. Sometimes you need to be deaf. You need to block out what people are saying. When it comes to right and wrong, when it comes to doing the right thing, when it comes to morality, when it comes to these things, you have to block out those manipulative people in your life. You have to be Hushim. You have to be deaf. You have to be deaf to what these people are saying. You need to stop listening. You have to stop listening to people who tell you certain things, who tell you what you're supposed to believe. When it comes to basic beliefs and tenets of what you hold true and truths that you know for fact, these are things that you hold dear to yourself. There's no second guessing them. Sometimes you need to be like Hushim and stop listening. So I just thought that was a really interesting way of looking at it, a fairly obvious way of looking at it when you look back, but I never thought of it in that way. So I think it's a good lesson. Sometimes you got to block out people who are manipulative. You have to just be deaf to them and keep to your convictions. Keep doing what you know is the right thing to do, no matter what other people say. Have a good Shabbos.